everybody. Welcome back for another episode of Get Ready. And excited today to talk to a relatively new friend of mine, someone who is a high performance coach along with my wife, Christy. And so let me tell you a little bit about Rebecca Mountain. She's an international speaker, author, and high performance coach, leading people through the transformation from the cycle of self-sabotage and fear to the joys of living as their best selves in their best lives, which is pretty dang cool. So welcome to the show, Rebecca.
Thanks, Brad. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me on your show.
It is my pleasure. And I have been enjoying Think Again. First of all, I got to say, I was telling you I was going to say this earlier, I love the name Think Again because when someone had told me, you need to come up with an idea of branding the way that you work and the way that I do tapping. And I had come up with the idea of calling it reconsideration. Because while I'm tapping with people, I'm helping them reconsider the thoughts that they've had. And that's what this is about. Think again.
Yeah,
it's reconsidering. Look at it. The stories you have about yourself and other people in your life and your career. Think again. I'd like you to reconsider.
Exactly. Well, we're done. Guess the interview's over. You go now.
So I've just told you what you need to know, so don't bother.
So buy the book. Hey. There's more in there. I've got weird stories that people can enjoy. Yes. But no, essentially that is what is about, my story, which we can get into is interesting. It's uncommon at best. And I won't get into all of the details. But you
got to read the book to find out all of the details.
Oh, absolutely. And the prologue, which was interesting, was written by my one and only friend in high school who didn't think I was completely nuts. And so it's really difficult for me to look at it because not only have I learned how to think differently than I did in my past, but I actually feel like I'm a completely different human. I read that and I'm like, really? Like that was me? And sometimes, depending on the size or velocity at which you fly out from one life into the other, not everyone needs to explode their lives like I did, but, I just decided to pack like a truckload of TNT and I'm like, back it up, boys. Boom, right? Out it goes. So you don't have to do that. It can be a more gradual process. But that's what I had to do. I had to make a really dramatic break to get away from an old way of thinking. And actually, even in making that humongous, explosion of my life, it still took some time for me to figure it out. And that's what this book is primarily about, is how I realized that no matter how hard I worked, because I'm a really, really hard worker. And yet I couldn't work my way into joy. I could not work my way into a level of fulfillment and worthiness. And yet I knew I had it in me. And so the book really started about 2 years ago. Because at that mark, I had, reconstructed my life again. And it was beautiful. I should have been happy. And yet I wasn't, right? And I know everyone's gonna laugh because I always talk about my husband, but I have a really, really awesome husband. And I have great kids and a wonderful house and, and I have all the accoutrements, if I can use a French word because I'm in Canada. I just probably insulted every French person. I'm sorry. My accent is horrible. And it's not representative of anyone who speaks that language. Anyway, but yet that it felt to me like a big black cloud. I was just kind of sitting on my chest. And I remember sitting on the couch watching TV with Mark going, why do I feel this weight? I have everything that should make me happy. And yet I wasn't. So that's kind of where it all started.
Yeah, it's like the old, the catchphrase about, what's the point of getting to the top of the ladder if it's leaning against the wrong building?
It's a bit of a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to reconsider your choices when you get to the top. You're like, and think differently very quickly about what you're actually going to be doing and how dangerous that new building is. So for sure. Yeah. But the interesting part about the sort of my uncommon life was, and why it was so drastic, is I belonged to a very isolating religious group, right? So it was very fundamentalist, but very much we have the right ideas and everyone else, well, they're just, where they're all going to go. But what happens is there's this thing called terror management theory. And it's whereby you have a group of people, and I'm not going to do it justice because I'm not a psychologist, but the way I understand it is that it's like when a group of people get together and believe something really, really strongly, they stop pulling out information from the outside, and they just sort of like repeat things internally, and they make it really difficult for you to leave and really scary to leave. So I was told that if I even thought about leaving, I would either die of cancer or get in a horrific car crash, or a combination of the both. Maybe horrible car crash on my way to chemo treatments for said cancer. And when you grow up like that, and it sounds kind of funny, but you really get scared, and there's all these other sort of things and proofs that they come out with to really keep you in. You know, you're not supposed to have friends outside of the group, and so when you don't have any kind of social tie to the real world, it's the only world you know, and so you stay.
You get in
right?
that bubble, that echo chamber, and
Yep.
which so many places want to do that. We see that with the media. It's like, don't listen to anybody else, because if you do, you might think again, and then you're not on our side.
Who wants that?
Yeah. Because people want to control you. So it's it's allowing yourself to say, okay, and it's all well. Hey, and whatever echo chamber you might be in, if you are happy and fulfilled and life is going great,
charge on, right?
But
that's my echo chamber was really sad. It was really dark, and full of uncertainty.
This is not all that I want it to be.
No.
I need to think again.
Yeah. And so I started to think about, thinking differently, doing something drastic, because when you leave something like that, it is drastic, because I lost whatever social network I had, gone. My family turned their back on me, so bye. They've come back since, but it was like I was the good kid. I towed the line. I married into the church. I had kids in the church. I was a good little girl. And then at the ripe old age of 32, and I'm like, yeah, let's blow it all up. I am no longer content. Blam! But I was taught that being successful is a punishable sin because it's vain. And so I kept getting fired when I worked for corporate Canada, because anytime I got a promotion or felt I did something good, I would find a way of sabotaging it, because I'm not supposed to feel good. I'm not supposed to be proud of myself, because that's a bad thing. And what started the rupture was I couldn't handle feeling like that anymore, because I knew that I had, lots in me. But I was just spiraling out of control. So when I say I blew up my life, so I left the church, I got a divorce. I lost my job because I was working for people who were part of the church. They didn't exactly side with me. I can't imagine why, and then I moved, without having sold my home. So I lived on a mattress and, folding chairs and stuff like that for about, 3 or 4 months until the house closed and I could get some of my furniture. And the thing is, I thought that freedom would make me happy. And to a certain extent it did. But what was not resolved was the way that I thought about myself and the assumptions I made and my relationship with the world, right? Like, what's that show called? The Indomitable Kimmy Schmidt. I'm getting the first word wrong.
Oh.
Comes out of a bunker.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm that minus the bunker. So seriously, I had to stop watching the show because I'm like seriously relating with this lady.
Flashbacks.
And I'm like, oh yeah, that was me. Oh, no one else had that experience. Okay, never mind. I didn't know how to order cable, so I got a little tiny TV with a DVD player in it, because I'm like, I know how to rent videos. It's like renting a book. It's like the library, except where I return the videos. I can't go to libraries because I never return my books. So it's just safer. But that's what I did, and until I married Mark, like I didn't have TV. So when I met him, and I'm like, what are all these things on television? And I would watch them like it's some weird social experiment. I'm like, wow, people watch this? Seriously? So I had
better off without that. This is a
huge
distraction.
Oh, I made that pretty, it's like, seriously, people spend time, never mind. skip. I'll just go back to reading my books, like my little pre-blow up self. So, after I left, I started my own business, and I started it as a single mom with no one to help me. I'd sold my house, so I had a little bit of money, and it was just like, how long can I make this last? And can I make money before it runs out? So I was really proud of myself, but because I had this inner sense of not being worth it, of looking at other people and comparing myself to them, and always, whenever you do that, you're always not above them. You're usually below them, because the people who are like running and kicking with gas, they're not looking around, right? They're focusing on what's in front of them, and that's what's making them successful. But I didn't realize that, right? So when I went on this wonderful exploratory search for why I could not be happy, the first place that I started was with the story I kept telling. And so I went through the high performance coaching program, for which Christy and I are now both certified. And the first session, I don't know what my coach said. I have no idea. But she says, tell me a little bit about yourself. So I launched into, I have a weird story, la, 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 la. And then I realized I've always told that story, and everyone's like, wow, that's weird. And I'm like, yeah, no kidding, right? And then as soon as I'm done, it's like, well, tacos or burritos, like what's next? So it had no impact, right? So I'm just, but like, and I feel like it should have an impact, but what impact am I looking for? And I realized that every time I retold my story, I re-anchored myself as that person.
Yep.
I reminded myself of what it means to be afraid. I reminded myself of what it means to be unworthy, of not enough, of not successful, of not making it. And all these knots basically is where I got knotted up. You can use that if you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Note to self. It's a tapping video in that.
Absolutely. Let's tap on that. Anyway, so I just immediately just started to bawl. This poor person. But the first time I'd met her, and I'm like, and I'm not a terribly emotional person, but I was leaking, and I was just like, I have this emotion, and I don't know what to do with it, but I'm like crying, but I'm not sad, because I realized that was my goal. I needed to let that person go, that scared 12-year-old girl, afraid of making people mad, afraid of doing the wrong thing, afraid of going to hell, and all those other kind of constructs that they created, among others, to keep me in. I needed to start to unravel those, and I had to start with how I thought about myself. And so that was my first aha, and that's where I first started to think again. So I would think, okay, what are some of the things that I think about myself? Success is bad. And like, well, is success really bad? What would my life be like if it wasn't bad? And then I'm like, wow, like I would blow the doors off of whatever I wanted to do. Oh, okay. Because I ran, like, who knew that was right, huh? Yeah. But I ran $1 million agency, doing Facebook ads and all this other kind of stuff. And I was miserable. And so over the course of, not only that coaching program, but continuing to work on it, continuing to dive into my stories, I then moved into assumptions I was making about other people. There's a funny story in the book. It's funny to me. It's probably not funny to anybody else, but there's this guy, Joey. And every time I'd post something on Facebook, Joey would make some sort of remark. And I'm like, Joey's mean. It's so high school. I mean, I don't even think that hits high school. I think I'm still stuck at like grade 3. Anyway, and as I describe in the book, as part of this process, I'm like, so who's on my number 1 hit list for people I may be making a false assumption about? And I'm like, Joey. And so I realized that he wasn't being disparaging. He's trying to let me know that he's on this path with me, and he's holding my hand, and I'm not alone, and he's trying to encourage me to continue on. And boy, did I feel like an absolute cad. So I went back and I found all of the posts, like anything he said in the past like month, and I'm like, good job, Joey, this is great, I love you so much. This is me under my penance, right? He had no idea. And then I realized, so I wrote him into the book and all that kind of a thing, and then I published the book, and I realized I haven't told him. I didn't tell him he's in the book.
I was thinking, because in the book you mentioned he doesn't know.
No. And of course I wrote that, but you write that, you're like, yeah, I'll tell him. Yeah, whatever. I'll get to it, right? Yeah. Like I got to telling my parents the day before it published. I'm like, hi, I've got a book coming out. It's too late to stop it. Bye. A lot of silence on that call.
You guys look fabulous in it.
Yeah, everybody likes just Styling. Anyway, because it's not, it could have been a tell-all, and I've really made it not that. I really wanted it to make about the process, not about just, pulling people down. But it was a pretty funny conversation I had with Joey when I told him he was in it, because I'm like, you're in it for a good reason. And he went through all these emotions. He said, I was mad, and then I was sad, and then I was feeling validated. And I did a really hilarious interview with him on my Facebook page. It's Rebecca Mountain Inc. I just incorporated myself because I couldn't come up with names. I'm like, my name, good enough. And so, you can go there, and it's interesting how he related to that and how it helped him to think differently as well. And that's really what I wrote the book for, right? I went through a very painful process. I didn't know what I was doing, and it took me 2 years. Now I have a business around helping people do this, but the book is also part of what can help people at least become aware of what we're saying to ourselves. Because you can work yourself to death, but if you don't believe in yourself, you cannot act counter to what you believe. And so it's a ball and chain. So you'll try and you'll push. And this was me. It's like pull, and you're trying to drag yourself along, but it's not working. Because if I think, well, no one's going to like me, everyone's going to make me go eat worms. And then I go to pick up the phone to make a sales call, I'm thinking nobody likes me.
Right.
So this person won't like me. And I cut myself off at the knees.
You're energetically saying, okay, look, we're going to pretend to have a phone call here about this, but the bottom line is you can't possibly like me.
Let's just skip to the no, and I'll just hang up the phone. Thanks.
One of the images I use sometimes, it's like we're on the tarmac at an airport with those flashlights, and there's planes of opportunity. It's like, nope.
Not here.
Don't land here.
Yeah, exactly.
Planes landing.
And I've kind of been thinking about that too, in terms of like opportunities that were absolutely missing, and how many did I miss because I call it being brain blind, right? So it's like, imagine, like, I look at it as perhaps I'm a little just weirder, but I'm imagining getting like smacked in the head with like bowling balls or like bowling pins. You're like bang, 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 right? And those are opportunities, by the way, that are hitting in the face, but you're missing it entirely because you're not looking for it. And when I spent all my time comparing myself to others or being very inward focused, that's looking sideways or worried about my past, right? And being anxious about that and guilt and shame and all that kind of stuff. I couldn't move forward. I couldn't see my path. I didn't know what to do. And the minute I cleared the air and pulled off all those blindfolds, I knew exactly what I needed to do. And I blew up my $1 million agency. So I have a few clients left, like the ones that are basically, I have an operations manager and she manages the whole thing. And I don't think about it anymore. What I think about is, how do I help more people live happier, wealthier, more fulfilled lives? And that's my motto. Everything I do is predicated on those 3 things. And at the end of my day, success to me is how much have I contributed to one of those 3 things for at least one individual that day, right? And it can be something as simple as sending a text to my sister. She's a teacher and she's struggling right now. She's finding it really, really difficult. So just reaching out to her and telling her I think she's doing a great job, right? That can contribute to one of those 3 things. It makes her feel fulfilled in what she's doing, right?
There's a great quote from Emerson about success, and the last line is, to know that one life has breathed easier because of you, that is to be a success.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. And because a lot of people, I was just teaching a 4-hour masterclass yesterday, and this is sort of like the last piece, where people think success is something you arrive at. And that's what I thought it was. I'm going to become successful. But what the real definition is you are successful by contributing to something every day. And that is success, because if you contribute to something consistently every single day, you focus on impact instead of income, that is what's going to make you rich. And, that is what's going to keep you clear on your direction on what you should do and how you should act and who you need to bring into your life and who you need to let go. And so I've really just calmed down a lot. Calm down, girl. But it's given me a lot more freedom to feel really amazing about myself every day. And imagine we're like little power plants. We generate success, we generate energy, we generate happiness, we generate love. And it's all about the fuel we put into that little power plant that determines what comes out. So I'm very careful about the fuel I put into my little power plant, because I want to be a happy person. I spent most of my life being miserable, misunderstood, because I'm a rather dramatic person. I know that totally does not come across. And so, but I felt bad about that. Like I had associated it with like negative feelings. So it's a matter of being able to rise above that. And now I just feel great. I laugh a lot about really ridiculous things.
It's quite a story of from where you were to where you are.
Mm-hmm.
And so many great examples of one of the things that I often say is self-sabotage is simply misguided self-love.
Yes.
Like when you talk about all those places where you sabotage yourself, every time you start to get successful and you sabotage it because you had programming saying, if I succeed, I will go to hell.
Yes.
Well, then not going to hell is a great act of self-love. It's like, hey, I just have, someone could say, wow, you just really blew that opportunity. It's like, I stopped myself from going to hell.
Yes, I did.
Because I love myself so much.
I got fired. Gonna help me with my box. Gonna walk outside. Right? Yeah, everyone's like,
No one loves themselves more than me.
Exactly. I know what y'all talking about. Yeah.
And it's, and that's the whole thing is then thinking again about what I need to how I need to treat myself with love.
Yep.
Is this true that I will go to hell if I'm successful? And giving yourself that room to rethink that. And throughout this, there's 7 stages in, breaking it down. And here's what you do. Where are you right now? Let's.
Yeah. And then what do you do? See, and I was very specific about how I wrote my book because I didn't want it to be just self-help and I didn't want it to be just a business book. I wanted people, because part of my process, and I find this very much with my clients, is that when you have clarity of vision and you've removed your stories, you have a lot more energy, right? It just naturally comes because you're happy, you feel unburdened, and you're excited. Then you got to know what to do with yourself, right? So, because if you just sit there and go, I'm excited,
what do I
do? Right? You're just it's inertia is going to draw you right back, and it's just there'll be no further ahead. So I wanted there to be some really key tactics that I use to say, okay, this is where you want to focus your energy for your business, for your clients. This is how you know you have the right people that you're going to be working with. This is how you know you're doing the right work that you love so much. And then here's how to be productive and effective with yourself. And then here's how to deal with setbacks, right? So it's not just changing your mind, but it's a matter of changing the way you approach your life, changing your relationship with time. We don't own it. We don't manufacture it. We simply use it. So how can you do that? How can you use your time more effectively? I've got 5 kids and 2 businesses, and I travel when I could, 4 or 5 times a year. I speak on international stages. I write books. I do all this stuff. And people are like, how do you find the time? And I'm like, in my calendar, right? So
funny, go looking. It's there.
Strange thing. Have you heard of it? They have electronic ones now. Yeah, and we all have one just for ourselves. You can have 3. And so there's all these different processes I go through. I set goals for myself. I've got, big projects, a plan, and then actions to make sure that I accomplish things. So it's been a really positive journey for me. It was scary when I first started out because I, on multiple levels, because I kept blowing myself up, right? Ooh, first, let's explode in 2008, blam, right? I even rolled my car, right, on the highway, on a 6-lane highway at 6:30 in the morning on St. Patrick's Day. I do not like driving on St. Patrick's Day, but I hit a patch of fast. I was going a little bit too fast down an embankment. My tires exploded, flipped over, and I skittered on my, about this close to the pavement. The car had crushed over me, so I was between my new roof and the steering wheel, skidding along at about 60 kilometers an hour, facing the wrong way because I'd flipped my car around too for fun. And I landed, and just in typical me form, the first thing I thought of was, I'm not dead. Because remember, they told me I'm going to die in a horrible car crash if I was thinking of leaving, and I had been thinking of leaving. So now I'm like, ha-ha, they're wrong. And then my next thought, entertainingly, was, this is what it's like
the
to
lengths you'd go to
car.
find proof,
Well,
nothing by half.
I'm just doing it for everybody, so no one needs to roll their car. Everyone can stay safe. Just take my word for it. Anyway, but I'm like, this
Thank
is
you.
what it's
On
like to
behalf of
be.
all of us, thank you
You're welcome.
for
Brad, for you, man. It's for you.
rolled my
So
car for you.
I'm upside down. I'm in this car and I'm like, so this is what it's like to be upside down in my car. That's kind of cool. I'm like, I should probably get out. So I opened my new sunroof. I hopped out. I wasn't hurt. I shook the glass out of my hair and I looked at my car and the very quickly backing up 6-lane highway. And I'm like, this is going to be a bit of a problem. My car is squished. Fun story at the end of that, if there could be fun out of that. That was sort of the definitive moment. And it's from that moment, that was March, everything was blown up and gone by December. Everything. Church I stopped going into in July. The divorce started happening in October. I got fired by December. And then I was out my ass. It was that really definitive moment of they're wrong. I am not going to die like they made me afraid I was going to die. And that as difficult as it's going to be, I would rather be miserable. I would rather be happy and alone than miserable, belonging to something I no longer believed in a relationship that was making neither of us happy. He's not a bad guy. We got married too young, right? I was with him for 17 years and I divorced him at 32. Let's all do the math.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the first blow up. The second blow up was changing my business away because I was doing work that didn't make me happy. I was good at it, but I didn't like it. So that was my second blow up. And now I'm like, if I do what I'm doing right now for the rest of my life, and also have weekly calls with you, Brad, because it's super fun. Then I'm happy.
And we keep you away from matches.
Very. No, I don't use the barbecue, Brad, because I'm just like, it'll be gone. My eyebrows would just be taken right off my face. Also, I'm very careful with driving.
You start getting close to anything flammable, and Mark's like, "Yeah, no,
no." Also, knives. I have like really awesome scars. No, and I burn myself a lot. I'm really clumsy. Like I don't take stuff out of the oven because I'm like, ow, burn.
I want to reassure everyone, none of how to do that is in this.
Not a how-to guide. Not that kind of a how-to guide.
You could follow the 7 stages and not do the cutting and burning and things
yeah,
like that.
Absolutely. I'm going to be how to survive if you're a klutz and continually burn, cut, and hurt yourself.
Separate thing.
Make it. Yep. Just don't make it permanent.
That's all. And on that note, is there any final final message you want to give the audience about creating the best life possible by thinking again?
It's an iterative process. Like for me, it was like a thunderbolt, right? So it just it shook me to my core, and it just like everything just was like shattered all at once. Like this, I'm talking about when I realized that I needed to change the way I thought and I needed to change my assumptions. For other people, it's very gradual, right? So it's a slow, quiet, gentle realization that life can be better, but I'm holding myself back. And to take it at your own pace, right? There's a workbook that goes with the Think Again book. If you go to thinkagainbook.com, that's where you can get the book and the workbook. If you really want to dig in, like if you're super, super serious about getting happiness, of generating success instead of chasing or trying to find these things, if they're elusive to you, it's because you're blind to them. But it's a very sometimes painful, but very clarifying process to be able to turn some of those thoughts on their head, think differently, think about how life would be different if you thought and acted according to these new beliefs. And then it's just a matter of reminding yourself, creating new neural pathways. So that's how you think naturally. And then you, like me, you can barely remember being like I was, a scared 12-year-old girl, afraid of making any mistakes and afraid that anything she did would be literally eternally damning. Some people don't go quite have that extreme. Yeah. That's my life.
And you don't have to wait to that point to start thinking again and start changing around. It's because nothing's too good for you.
Yep.
And you're worth it.
Absolutely. And you know what else? I've had parents buy this book for their children because if I was a 20-year-old girl and I read this, it would have saved me so much pain, especially when you're in your 20s, when you're supposed to be an adult, but it's really, really hard and there ain't no manual. You know, having some clarity, at least not feeling bad about yourself, at least avoiding assumptions can save you a lot of those sleepless nights. So I encourage people of all ages, like, so people from 85 to 14 have read this book, and they found it really, really helpful. My kids, like it or not, get to learn this stuff because it's like, guess what dinner conversation is today? Chapter 4. They're like, Mom. It's okay. I graduated them up from the 4 agreements. So let's start at that first. So yeah, those are my thoughts. Lovely.
Awesome. Well, thank you for writing this. Thank you for sharing all this information. Thank you for blowing up your life. Because
no problem. Did it for you.
You just
so you don't have to.
Yeah, I do it so you didn't have to. Because it's benefiting so many people. And thank you to everyone watching, and thank you for considering thinking again, so that you can likewise go from where you are to where you could be, which is so much more awesome.
It is. And thank you very much for having me, Brad. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks.